everybody, it's Teresa with ReStickson.com. We have been back from the Christmas tree farm for a whole day, and I am finally ready to decorate this tree that we got and show you some of my best tips for doing it while I'm at it. So as soon as we got back from the Christmas tree farm, we set this tree up here and gave it a good thorough water. And before I decorate a live tree, I like to let it kind of settle overnight. We gave this a good spray with some just over-the-counter insecticide too, because you know, living things live in living things, so wanted to get that fixed. So when it's had overnight, the branches can kind of come down. Like if you buy it at Home Depot and it's been wrapped for a while, you'll want the branches to relax. Since ours was cut fresh, we didn't really have to worry about too much of that. But if anything's gonna shift around or the needles are gonna drop, you wanted that to all happen before your ornaments are on. So once it kind of settled in place, I had Jared string up all the lights. That's kind of how we divide the labor. So first thing to go on the Christmas tree is always the lights, because you certainly do not want to be winding cables around all of your ornaments. And depending on the tree, we have a few different strategies. On one of our favorite trees, we have 2 different sizes of bulbs, because that can really just make it look magical. Sometimes we use colored, sometimes we use white. It all depends on what the theme of the tree is. This one we use white lights on because this is our family traditions tree, and so I just love it classic and clean and elegant. One of the other things we like to do when we're putting our lights on is to stuff it way back in the branches and even kind of coil around the branches coming forward, and then stuff it back and coil around. We like a pretty light, dense tree, and that's one great way to do that. You don't want everything to be on the same level. So if everything's right on the tip of the branches, it'll just look flat. But if you have it stuffed in the back, then it brings a whole lot of dimension and it's just beautiful. So that's where we're at so far, and now it's time to start putting on the ornaments. Now I have a whole philosophy about how to decorate trees that I'm going to share with you. For one thing, I really like a tree that is stuffed. There's some beautiful classic spare and elegant trees that I see on Pinterest, and those are great, but just not how I roll. I want a tree that's just dripping with ornaments, and in order to do that, I have to enact a little strategy. So just like with the lights, I use all layers. I go from the very back all the way forward, because that gives you a ton of visual interest. There are all these different layers to look at. Every time you look at the tree, you see something new, and I really love it on this one because I have some special little surprises that I tuck way back in, and then you just get these beautiful little glimpses peeking out from behind the branches. Should we tuck you back in the branches? A tree, decorating a Christmas tree, is really just a large-scale floral design. And like any kind of design, knowledge of good design principles will help you. So for example, one classic design principle is the rule of 3s. For some reason that I'm sure some professional designer could explain to you, but I can't, everything looks better when it's in groups of 3s. And so I tend to buy my ornaments in sets of, make my ornaments in sets of 3, 6, 9, 12. There's just something visually appealing about that. The other thing is, as I've been talking about, the depth of field and visual interest, using lots of layers by doing everything not just on the surface, but further back and further forward, gives you a lot more to look at. There's also this principle of having your eye have a place to rest. So this is kind of a beef I have with a lot of department store Christmas trees where they're trying to sell ornaments and they just plaster everything on. It can be overwhelming. If every ornament is a star, there's no place for your eye to kind of rest. So I like to have a lot of ornaments that are just workhorses. They're there to kind of fill things up, to add maybe a pop of color or a little sparkle, but they're not super detail oriented. because that way you can have a tree that's still dripping with ornaments without everything looking so busy and overwhelming, because you have a little simplicity worked into your design. Okay, so with that in mind, I tend to divide my ornaments up into 3 categories: the workhorses, the mid-range, and the stars. So the workhorses, those are your plain globes, your simple pillow ornaments, or ornaments that you just happen to have a ton of. Those are the ones that can go further back, that will kind of be the foundation coat, you know, the base coat for your tree. And then your mid-range are the ones that are a little bit more special, that maybe you don't have as many of, that go a little bit further up the branch. And then the stars are the showstoppers, the real centerpieces. Those go on the very tip of the branch so that they can get the most attention. And those should also be the ones that you have the fewest of, the ones that really need a spotlight because they're so beautiful. So after your lights are done, the next thing you would do is a garland, because anything that has to go all the way around or wind the tree, you want to get that done before you have ornaments you have to work around. On this tree, I don't use a traditional garland. Instead, I have these little chains. Since this is the family traditions tree, all the ornaments represent that idea of family and being a link in a chain. And so these are as close as I get to garlands, but they're longer. I definitely want to put these on before the end. And then I also use a little bit of floral embellishments, these little floral picks. So you want those to go in near the beginning. But my big thing on this tree that makes it special is adding a lot of photographs. And some of the photographs I use are huge. They're full size. And that's one thing I love about doing Christmas trees is there's no rules about what can and cannot go on a tree. If you've ever been to like floral design places, I mean, I've seen people like wire full-on bikes into a tree. People come up with some of the most wild stuff. But I love this because that's what this tree is all about. And this is what I tuck back furthest in the branches, in part because it's the biggest, and so I definitely need to have room for it, and in part because I love to just have all these faces of people that I love peeking out through the branches behind the glittery lights. So on a real tree, it's a little tricky. I might have to wire these in place a little bit. When I use an artificial tree, I can kind of bend the branches to support them. So I'm going to start placing these around, and then we can keep adding layer upon layer of ornament, and I'll explain it to you and why I'm making these choices as I go. The deepest level of ornaments is in place now. I've got all my pictures situated. I've got my little floral picks and my pseudo garland in place. So now it's time for me to add the workhorse ornaments. So I'm going to be pushing these. I'm starting with just these plain copper bulbs, and I'm going to be pushing these as far back on the branch as I can get. Now, it's really easy to overthink ornament placement. You know, there's too many over here, there's too few over there, that one's too close, blah, blah, blah. So here's how I tackle that. For each type of ornament, I figure out how many I have. 3, 6, 9. Oh, I've had some breakage of these ones. So I have 13, unlucky 13. And I'm going to divide that by 4. Now, for me, that is the 4 quadrants of the tree. So it's like I divide it in half and then in half again, as if it were a pie. And each of those quadrants gets 3, and then one will get an extra of that type of ornament. That might sound a little bit compulsive to you, but it will save you so much time. If you just know, I have these 3 ornaments and they have to go on like the front right of the tree, then you can just toss them up, and it will save you so much angst of, you know, where do I need another one of these, and is that too close, and blah, blah, blah. If you can narrow it down to the front right, front left, back right, back left, then you can just toss them on up and it'll go so fast. So I've got these globes, I've got these little paper ornaments and a few other things to just toss on the tree, and then we'll start fine-tuning with some of our superstars. The whole time I've been decorating this tree, I keep thinking, you know, it's not as full as it seemed to me last year. By the time I got about halfway through my ornaments and the tree was still looking, I mean, not exactly bare, but not stuffed either, I started to get a little suspicious. And I just found out Jared didn't buy the size tree that I thought he did. He bought it like 2 feet taller. So apparently I have a lot more room to work with this year. Anyway, I've got all of my main ornaments on now. And some of these can still be special. Like I have these little monogram pillows I made that I actually really love, but I also have 40 of them. So if I waited and put those on last, that's all you would see on the tree. It would just be that blanketing the tree, and everything else would be lost on the inside. So even though I love it, if you have a ton of them, then those can still be considered workhorse or mid-range ornaments. Meanwhile, these I actually have quite a few of as well, but they make up the whole theme of my tree. These are ornaments, and I'll be sure and link to the tutorial on my blog, but these are our values. Jared and I, one night, we made a list of all the values we wanted our family to stand for, and then I put them all on these ornaments. So even though I have a lot of these ornaments, and normally that would put it in the mid-range category, I'm going to use them as stars because they are the whole point of what I'm trying to share with this tree. So I'm going to put these on, and then it's just a few last ornaments, a few more pictures, and some last minute delicate ones like these paper hearts. And I'll link to the tutorial for these too, although I think I need to just make a video of these. These ones are so delicate that they really need to be on top, because otherwise you would lose the effect of the heart. If this was buried in branches, you really wouldn't see it. So this one has to go on the end. And some of these, like I have these little ribbon starbursts that are the same thing. They're just a little delicate, and so if they were further back in the branches, they just wouldn't pop. They wouldn't look as special. So these ones have to go on the front. And then, so let's see, I think that's it. I'm getting close to finish, just a few more, and then my tree will be done. So now that I've got all my ornaments on, the last thing I added were these little red rubies. Not only because they're the smallest, so they need to be the closest so that you can see them, but also because they add a little sparkle, so that helps to be close to the lights. And then very last, I have all of our treasured special ornaments. I love doing my themed trees and my designer trees, but there has to be a place for all of Addie's goofy homemade ornaments and things we get from friends, and that's what goes on this tree. So pride of place goes to Addie's little footprint and handprint and some pictures of our beloved pets, and so those will get front and center spot. Okay, it's done. Let me take you a little bit closer because this is a tree that rewards on close inspection. So I hope you got some great tips from this. I do a lot of trees every year, so hopefully some of my hard-won lessons can pay off for you. I hope you leave inspired to tackle your own tree and celebrate these traditions in your family life. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. You know where to find me, and subscribe to the channel because I have so much more for the holidays. So we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Look at that booty. Look at that booty.